Hello everyone and welcome back to Factorio C Block. I'm Bobbin and you are watching episode 16. I should go ahead and mention up front this episode is a reshoot. The first time I shot it I had some video problems and unfortunately I haven't been able to recover to exactly the point where I was before. So I'm sort of reshooting the episode. I think it will be a better episode for that. The one issue that we could have is we could have some little anachronisms, so I apologize up front for any disturbing anachronisms that show up. Let's talk about research. In between episodes, I got a whole bunch of research done. Most of it is not critically important for progression. I have been sort of refraining from doing progression critical research, but some of it is very nice. You're looking at some of it now. The little images on the building come from a research called Factory Upgrade External Overlay Display. That is one of the Factorissimo researches that I got done between episodes. I also got the Factory Upgrade Preview, the Factory Upgrade Chest Connections, Recursion 1, and Architecture 2. Architecture 2 opens up larger buildings, and Recursion 1 opens up the ability to put smaller buildings inside larger buildings, and those are very convenient. The other one that we're going to be doing something with in this episode was hydrorefining. I got hydrorefining set up that will allow us to get more different kinds of ores. In keeping with this more ores, we're going to need to be able to smelt more different kinds of metals. So I got the advanced smelting 1 or 2 for a whole long list of metals. Let me read them off here. Chrome, cobalt, cobalt steel, manganese, nickel, invar silver, zinc, brass, gunmetal, bronze, and solder. Quite a list. Aside from that, I got character inventory slots, so I have a new row on my inventory. Let's take a look at that. It's right down across there. And I also got shotgun shell damage, gun turret damage, some other military type stuff to improve damage. I have to have that because I'm running into some worm islands and I'm having to clear them out. It's a little bit of a pain because the worms tend to have a larger range than the turrets. And I'm using turret creep, and it's kind of, I have to put my turrets at risk in order to take out the worms, but it's going okay. It's not a huge problem. I'm probably never going to show any of that turret creep on video because we've all done turret creep, I hope. Okay, so what we're looking at here in the buildings is I have moved my power plant setup that I had in experimental mode into buildings. And the reason they're in buildings at the moment is because this is not the final place that I want this stuff. I think it's going to be here a while, but the place where I really want to put power I haven't built yet because I need to build a lot more land before I'm ready to do that. So for now, just so that I can pick it up and move it if I need to in a very convenient way, I've just got it packaged up into buildings. The first building is doing the farming. It's making these nil aubergines. I think actually that's like supposed to be an eggplant, but anyway, or maybe not an eggplant, something like that. This is the building that's growing them. Then I've got a building next to it that's doing the oil processing, and then a building next to that that's doing the generation. Let's go inside and take a peek and see what we got going on. This one, as you might expect, has the crop fields. They appear to have stopped at the moment. I think my oil production is full. The whole line is backed up here. That's fine. I've got some sand production up the top to keep the fields provided with sand. And in order to process waste from this line, I've got sulfur and landfill production. I'm just using this air filter to provide oxygen in a chemical plant. Taking up a lot of space in this building just to clear up waste, but what can I say? You got to do it or the whole process stops. It's only producing a trickle of materials because sand is not something that requires a big flow of material through here. So we've got our seed recycling. Here I do just have one. I'm taking advantage of the fact that all 4 of these can reach a very short segment of belt in order to load their seeds. So there can be a little bit of a backup on the line, and it's not going to have seeds sitting on a belt somewhere where things can't reach them. Okay, in the next building, oil processing. The ratios are done a little better here. I've got 2 of the bioprocessors, 2 of the presses, and 2 of the oil refineries, 1 filter, same number of farms as before, but we are able to process everything when we're not backed up like we are right now. At the moment, our fuel tank is full. So we filled it up. We're okay on base mineral oil and glycerol gas. I will probably just break these tanks as they fill up. What's going to happen is they're going to fill up and then everything is going to stop. So I've got to keep my other generation going in to step in whenever that happens. But I will just break and respot the tanks in order to destroy the liquids when that goes on. Other than that, this is basically the same setup you saw before. There's nothing all that great about it. I am collecting quite a bit of crystal dust here. That'll have to sit until we start doing something with geode processing. Okay, and then in the last building, we've got lots of these oil boilers set up to create steam to run generators. Nothing too exciting here. It's the same general setup as before. This building is capable of producing, I think, 10.8 megawatts, and of course I can slightly more than double the capacity if I need to by just adding more boilers. So we got lots of power here. Okay, what else are we going to look at today? Well, let's take a look at what I have done with the metals. Well, I'll tell you what, short detour on the way there. Let's take a look at something else. One of the technologies that I finished, not between episodes, but in the piece that we are now doing the reshoot of, was ore processing 2, I think. Let me go in here and take a look. What was that? Oh, whoa, quite a list. Advanced Ore Refining 1, that's the one that we got. And I wanted it for this Ore Crusher Mark II because I want to upgrade some of my crushers. This crusher in particular is doing the crushing on stuff for landfill, and I'd like to produce a little more landfill. Let's go ahead and upgrade that now. So if we go in here, we can find the crusher building. This one requires some of the bricks that we made before and steel. So we'll just take and hit upgrade, and we'll get this picked up and replaced. Alright, there we go. This machine, if we look at this one up here, this is one of the old ones. It had a crafting speed of 1.5. This one has a crafting speed of 2. So we should be able to produce about a third more landfill now just by upgrading this crusher. So that's pretty nice. That's assuming that all the electrolyzers are working fine. They are actually, there are more of them now. I think I've got 20 of them here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's 9. So this row would have 11, yeah, 20. So we've got 20 of the electrolyzers there, so we're in pretty good shape there. So one of the things that we're going to do on the metals production, I have done quite a bit of a revamp up top on metals, and let me just show you sort of what we've got here. I normally don't like to run a lot of belts and loops, but I have decided that that's a good idea here. And the reason I have decided that is because I want to have sort of a bus arrangement here for my ores. But in the process of doing that, I want to be able to pick them up and drop them off both from any point on the line. And unfortunately, with a regular bus arrangement, you can't do that. It's one way at any given point. You can take and put stuff onto it with a T intersection and run stuff both up and down the bus. If you do that, though, you can only really have one point of insertion onto it. You can have as many as you want coming off of it. In this case, I've just got a loop running all the way around. So, for example, here I'm doing sapphirite, and further up I'm doing sapphirite in this general neighborhood. But in principle, I could come over here and put some more sapphirite onto the belt here, and come down here and put some more sapphirite onto the belt here. And I could be, up top, I could be pulling the ore off in 2 or 3 different locations. That's what this loop allows me to do. Even though it takes a lot of space, and it's something that is kind of frowned on, having loops, there are good reasons for that. In this case, it shouldn't be a problem, and I will be able to pull stuff on and off at any point that I want. So this idea is extended a little further up, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. For now, I want to add a couple of new metals, and I've already got loops set up for them up here, and I've got insertion points for where they're going to go onto the belt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my blueprint and put down a new area for crystallization. And I love the nanobots. They get much faster when you get the upgrades for them. Let's see if we got all the materials. We do. Okay. So we've got this hooked up now, and it's already beginning to make some sludge. I don't... that's interesting that it's... Oh, it's making sludge, but I need to put some filters in here. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's see. Over here, we'll put some empties. So we've got 8 on here. That should be enough. It's got to have 5 in this machine to take and recycle them. A few spare ones keeps things running smoothly. So the next piece that I'm going to need is I'm going to need to crush these new ores. The new ores that I want are going to be Givolite and Crotinium. And I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. We'll live. So let me come over here and blueprint these crushers, because I'm going to have to crush those ores too. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to go right there and capture that bit, and we're just going to plop it down right that is not where I want that quite. What's going on with that? That's a little weird. We'll go ahead and put it down like that. That'll be fine. I'm going to have to make a little bit of an adjustment here. Let's take this piece off and that. And we'll put that there. Now these, I'm going to go ahead and set the filter on the outputs first. I believe if we come through here, is that going to... Okay, that will finish building. Okay. So here, the outputs will be set the same as these over here. So crushed stone here and crushed stone here, and that's fine. Up top, this one says rubite. This one I just reconstructed, so it says nothing. Let's make this one crushed Givolite and this one crushed Crotinium. Okay, I want to set those before I start the crushers so that they don't start putting out wrong materials up here, because they both need to be set in order to make sure that we don't output crushed stone on the wrong side. So I think we're ready for this. Let's go ahead and set the recipe to crush our Givolite and to crush our Crotinium. There we go. And we should see stuff starting to come up here and go on to these belts. So there on the Givolite and here on the Crotinium. So we're definitely going around there. These are just going to sit and accumulate on the belt until I get some more processing in. That will be pretty soon, between episodes, most likely. And so let's go and take a look at what I've got up here. I've got a couple of these large buildings set up. These are the new Factorio buildings. And this one, I've set up my sorting for Saphirite and Bobmonium. So it's mostly an empty building because these are quite large. These are 46 by 46 on the inside. But we've just got our crushed stuff coming in here, and we've got our... Oh, that's noisy. We've got it getting sorted, and we've got the refined metals coming out on the back, and we've got the, looks like, our slag coming down here. Our waste stream is coming out the bottom. Similarly, we have the same thing going on with Bobmonium on this side. If we look what's happening out here with that waste stream, it's coming out here, it's going on a belt, and it's coming down. And at the moment, it is going under this building, and it's coming back, and it's rejoining the slag stream over here. So it's getting recycled. Got to recycle. That really helps with our materials production. Okay, so similarly, in this other building, the setup's a little different. This one is where we've got Bobmonium, and for some reason, I have it stopped. What is going on here? Oh, this is set to the wrong recipe. Let's go ahead and set that to the right recipe. I had it set to chunks because I'm going to be doing chunks here in a minute and redoing, actually. So that's one of those disturbing anachronisms. Anyway, we've got the Bobmonium coming through here, or not Bobmonium, rubite, and it's getting processed into ores and coming out the back. Now here's another one of these large merry-go-rounds over here. This is where our ores are getting sorted, and we can see that I've got gold and aluminum on here. That's going to be coming from our hydrorefining of this stuff that we're going to set up in this episode. So we've already got some because I had it set up before. Nevertheless, we're going to go through here. We're going to get this all set up in this episode and go on. Now, up here, I'm going to set up another one of these for ingots. I don't have that yet. I'm a little short on space. I've got to have more landfill because these take up a lot of space. But at the moment, they're coming in, they're going into small buildings, and the ores are getting smelted. And this is the same sort of smelting setup we had before. These are all very simple, and so I've got 3 of them being smelted in one building, but potentially I can have some more complicated processing going on in these buildings. And that is going to be the case for some of them. Over here, I've moved my steel and silicon and lead, and things are a little more complicated, but not drastically so. Okay, heading back down here, let's take a quick look at hydrorefining. Hydrorefining involves getting a little more material out of these. If we cut off the flow here, which I'm going to do now, we can come over here to this building, and when it finishes here, let's change the recipe, and we can change the recipe back to the chunks. But before we do that, let's take a look here. Looking at the recipe for sorting the crushed rubite, what we're getting out of that is we're getting 2 lead and 1 nickel and 1 slag out. So we're getting that for 4 crushed rubite. So we're putting 4 in and we're getting 4 out, and one of the 4 things that we get out is slag, which is relatively low value. Let's switch it to the chunks because we're going to be getting chunks out of this hydrorefining process. When we do that, we get 2 lead, 1 nickel, 1 aluminum, and 1 gold, and 1 slag. So we're putting 6 chunks in according to the recipe here, and we're getting 6 things out, and one of them is the low value slag. So in principle, we're getting a little bit more metal out of it, so it's a little more valuable. However, the total proportion based on what we're putting in is actually a little lower on our lead and nickel. That's not really a problem because we don't need a lot of extra lead and nickel right now. We certainly don't need a lot of extra nickel. The lead we can use at least. So if we go and do this, we got to get our chunks, and the way we get the chunks is through hydrorefining. That's done in a flotation cell, which is the machine that we got from the hydrorefining research. Let's look at the recipe here for hydrorefining. It's going to take our crushed rubite, and it's going to take 4 of them. No, it's going to take 2. Okay, it's going to take 2 crushed rubite and some purified water, and it's going to give us 2 rubite chunks, and then it's going to give us a couple of waste products. It's going to give us a geode, and it's going to give us some nitric wastewater, I believe. The nitric wastewater can be recycled to get mineralized water. The geodes can be processed for more resources eventually. We're not setting up geode processing just really soon, but it is kind of on the horizon because it's a more efficient way to do it, and we'll need it to recycle this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up, we've got to get some purified water in here, and we've got to hook all this stuff up, and I've got the recipe set here already, but we're going to hook everything up here and get our hydrorefining working. And I'm going to do that with a blueprint from the previous setup rather than setting it up all up on camera because it's a little involved, but I will explain what's going on after. So quick cut and we'll have that. Okay, through the magic of blueprints and video editing, we have now built our whole hydrorefining facility here. This is actually a provisional setup. This is not how it's going to be in the final analysis, but this should be functional. Let's take a look at what we got here. First of all, I set up the flotation like I had mentioned, and it's going to be processing this crushed ore, and I've broken the line for the moment so it's not bringing any in. It's going to need a supply of purified water. For the time being, we've got a hydro plant here. The hydro plant is producing purified water and saline, and the saline is just getting clarified away. We're using one of these water well pumps to get the water in. So the purified water is being input. We're going to have a source for our crushed ore here, and so we've got the necessary materials. Now we just have to deal with all the outputs. The first output is going to be the rubite chunks, and we're also going to have these geodes coming out. And I am taking and dumping all the outputs onto this belt, all of the solid outputs. So this is a mixed belt. And it's going to come through here, and we're going to pull the chunks off. The chunks are going to get peeled off by this splitter and go into the sorting machine. The geodes are going to come down here and go onto this belt, which is also where we're pulling the slag out. So we've got a mixed waste belt coming through. It goes under the machines here using a red underground because it needs the extra reach, not because it needs the speed. And that's going to come down here. For now, I'm not quite ready to deal with the geodes, so I'm just going to peel them off and put them in a box. And so only the slag is going to exit the building. The other thing that's going to happen is we're going to have this nitric wastewater coming out. The nitric wastewater for now is going to be clarified. Now let's talk a little bit about what the longer term plans are while we put this thing in action. I need a belt. Here we go. So we've got stuff coming up here, and we can see materials coming out soonish. There we go. Some chunks went out that way. We got some geodes coming down here. They're getting peeled off, and then the slag's coming off and going down and out the building. So that's all working at this point. Longer term, I don't want to waste all of these materials. I'm going to have to do something with geodes. I'm going to have to do something with saline water. I'm going to have to do something with the clarifier. Well, I want to get rid of the clarifiers. I'm going to have to do something with nitric wastewater. And I might not want to have this hydro plant in here because I'd like to have potentially space for more ore processing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up another one of these buildings that is just doing waste processing. And I'm going to take and put all the waste out of this building and put it on a belt. That includes all of the wastewater. The wastewater will just get barreled up and put on the belt. And so I'm going to have this mixed belt coming out of here with all of this waste on it. Now I guess I should mention just a little bit about mixed belts. They're often frowned on, and there's a very good reason for that. You can have deadlocks on mixed belts if you're pulling stuff out along the way, and suddenly every machine has something in front of it, but it's not the thing that it needs. That's actually a very common thing that happens with new players on mixed belts. They get into this, they say, well, I've got all this stuff, let's just put it on this belt. Then they go and say, oh, the belt has frozen up. I've got to get this stuff going, so let's just make it loop around. So all the stuff it didn't pick up the first time, it'll pick up the next time. Then eventually it deadlocks again, and this time it's sort of intractable. There's no way to solve that problem by making a looping belt in any permanent way. The key thing to managing a mixed belt is that you always need to make sure that every item gets peeled off at some point. Ideally, just put something at the very end of the belt that will take every item. So in this case, we're probably going to use a warehouse. We're going to have a building that just processes this waste, and as long as my warehouse never fills up, it's not going to be a problem that I have a mixed belt. For the most part, I think geodes are going to sit there for a while. They're just going to pile up until I get geode processing going. The other stuff, the wastewater, the slag, that will all... Slag is especially easy to deal with. I'll just take and send it off where I'm sending it now. The wastewater, it'll get unbarreled. It'll go through a hydro plant to refine it. I'll get mineralized water as a result, and I can send it on. The other stuff that comes through here, well, the barrels will just get returned. So barrels will get returned up here so that they can be used again. So I'm going to have sort of a barrel cycle going. At the moment, this is kind of slow because I don't have a lot of rubite being crushed. There's only one crystallizer doing it. But eventually, I can expand this capacity. The reason for having 4 hydro refiners here is so that I can expand the capacity. If you look at the ratio on these machines, it is 4 of these to 1 of these, at least when you're talking about the Tier 1 ore sorter and the Tier 1 flotation cell. So I think that is actually going to be everything that I need to discuss in this episode. Between episodes, I'm going to clean all this up, we get a little more research done, and hopefully we'll start to make a little faster progress going here. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next episode.